Philosophical Mysticism, a Spiritual Handbook for Mankind, simplified into 100 short lessons. So this video is about the new book, Philosophical Mysticism, and it's a philosophy book. It's also about spirituality, but it could be a little hard to follow at times, though it's written to be very accessible to the regular person. But this video and the 100 other videos to follow, these short lessons, are going to really simplify it and make it accessible and sort of address any concerns or problems that you might have. So that's sort of the goal here. The book itself, precisely, it's going to present a spiritual framework based entirely on philosophy. So it's going to give you this spiritual framework that could potentially replace religion, based entirely on philosophy. And also it's going to make use of and forward a brand new theory of mind. And the theory of mind here in the sort of philosophical sense. Again, don't be scared if you don't really know too much about philosophy. I'm going to break it down for you, make it really simple. And by the time you finish, if you go all the way through with the 100 lessons, you should have a pretty good grasp of the arguments in the book. So starting with lesson 1, the first video, we're going to be talking about the primer and the table of contents. So the primer. Philosophy is a unique discipline. Central to philosophy is the concept of mind. So we don't really think about this as much these days in sort of modern context, but going as far back as we're willing to go, philosophers have always been very, very concerned about the mind, whether their own mind or the mind of God or the rational principle that orders the universe, the nous or whatever. Philosophers have always been concerned, sometimes obsessed with this notion of mind, whatever mind may be. By following the development, nature, and influence of mind in all its forms, past, present, and future, I argue that we can build a spiritual base. Such a base can function as a replacement for religion or as a means to fill a spiritual void. So in the book, it's going to talk about everything mind, everything you possibly say about mind in the philosophical sense. So really important. It's not really going to be psychological arguments or arguments in neuroscience. It's going to be a philosophical treatment of the mind, which is a little different than we're used to. Consider we're sort of immersed in all the psychology and neuroscience and so on. So we're going to sort of look at everything you could possibly say about the mind. And we're going to follow the mind all the way back to our ancestor Homo habilis, going millions of years ago, all the way into the future with robots and universal mind, whatever the future may hold. So it's going to sort of span this huge sort of time period, and it's going to sort of go into detail about every single aspect of mind you could possibly think of. This has always been the ultimate goal of philosophy. So again, philosophers do sort of talk about a lot of different things and have lots of different interests, but the big goal, if you're talking about Plato or Aristotle or any of the sort of great philosophers, they really are trying to understand the mind. And sometimes they might call it the soul or the spirit or whatever. Really, that's the big prize. That's really what we're after. The book offers a path to achieve this goal, or at least understand the goal, which might be taken as a type of philosophical mysticism. So that's really what the book's trying to do. The argument's going to be very diverse, covering a lot of ground, but really what we're after, we're trying to really understand the mind. And we're trying to sort of this ultimate goal of understanding the mind. And by doing so, we could really, we could build something. We could build a spiritual base. And whether in sort of, and it could be mystical. It doesn't, even though it's based on philosophy, it could still be sort of mystical and weird and sublime and sort of give us that flavor of spirituality that we're after. So that's sort of the primer. That's sort of what the book is sort of setting out to do. So looking at the table of contents, I'm just going to briefly go over the different sections. The first section, section 1, just the foundation and plans, going to give the sort of main premises, the main argument. Going to go over some of the issues you might have with the major premises. Section 2 sort of starts way back with Homo habilis in the beginnings of mind. It sort of gives a sketch tracing us from our ancestors, sort of catching us up to the modern day in terms of what the mind really is, or the understanding that we now have the mind. Section 3, memories and emotions, sort of talks about the relation of memories and emotions and how this sort of has a huge impact on us and influences our mind and our behavior. Section 4, collective unconscious. This is sort of make a sort of bold claim that there are innate memories, and I'm sort of building on what Carl Jung would call the collective unconscious and the archetypes. So the argument here, there are innate memories, and these innate memories are going to sort of influence our behavior. Section 5, temporal selves, talks about consciousness, like how did consciousness emerge? What is it? What are the functional components of it? That's going to be section 5. Section 6 talks about ideas, like what are ideas? How do they function? It's going to sort of give a rather interesting argument for ideas being sort of non-physical potentialities. Section 7, words and archetypes, to sort of take the innate memories, the archetypes, and how they sort of mesh with words, how we use words. Language and meaning, section 8, is going to talk about language and how it evolved and what it means and how we communicate with one another and how ideas are sort of instantiated in the mind in different people through the use of words. Section 9 is a little kind of weird, it kind of goes a little off track, but it's going to talk about mythology and sort of how mythology, if we sort of look at it as a story of ideas and archetypes, it makes a lot more sense than a story of gods or people or something like that. Section 10 sort of talks about poetry, which is sort of important here in terms of the mythos. Section 11 talks about art. Section 12 gives the structure of religion. Section 13 talks about philosophy and sort of the philosophical understanding of human nature. So sort of notice the contrast here between two models of human nature, faithful servants or rational animals, sort of two different things. Section 14 talks about nous or wisdom, knowledge. Section 15 talks about the Godhead. Section 16 talks about reason and rationality and sort of some of its pitfalls. Section 17 is a little bit kind of psychology, a little bit, and it's going to sort of follow how to sort of integrate the unconscious with the conscious. So it's going to give this sort of practical guide to do so, which I'm taking to be very important for achieving spiritual sort of meaning or spiritual sort of growth. 18, Fall from Grace, sort of traces the sort of history of philosophy and sort of how it got lost in religion in the Dark Ages. Rising Star talks about the relationship between philosophy and science. Section 20 talks about manipulative artifacts and how we are being manipulated by artifacts as sort of objects in the world that have influence over us. Section 21 talks about whether or not we should transmigrate consciousness out of the body, whether it be like a robot body or onto a computer or so on. 22, Transcending Our Programming, talks about how do we escape the manipulation of ideas, memories, archetypes, or how do we sort of overcome our own mind, our own mental sort of determinate, or how do we stop being mentally determined? Emergence talks about freedom and overcoming physical causation. 24, Mysticism for Robots, says, well, why should we leave robots out? Why they might potentially have minds as well, so we might want to sort of include them in this process. 25 Beyond talks about universal mind. 26 just sort of wraps it up, sort of summarizes everything, brings it back into view. So that's sort of that's the sort of table of contents, and that's lesson 1. If you want to learn more, you could download the ebook on Philosophical Mysticism: The Spiritual Handbook for Mankind by Nicholas Schroeder for free. Most booksellers, Apple, Barnes & Nobles, etc. You can also get a PDF version on Phil Papers and Phil Archive. It's also on Amazon if you're willing to pay 99 cents. See you at the next lesson. See you there.